Hi, Sadis. How are you doing? Welcome to Sim. Hope you are great. So I came across this video where white women were talking about how they were radicalized and all that, and so many people told their stories and how Christianity was the one that radicalized them, how they saw how black people are being treated and how white people are being treated, and decided that are the same people that will tell you God is good and all that. To their white people will see a black person and will not do what they are supposed to do that is right. So it means their own Christianity. There are some people that you are supposed to show love. There are some people that you are not supposed to show love. So she also talked about, let me read this out. Please listen on the contrast in our story. As a white teen who got into more trouble, I was put in therapy. Meanwhile, Kyla, as a 14-year-old black child, was put in a juvenile center and then foster care for defending herself. The truth is that, let me tell you all something. Racism did not start today, and I don't know when it will end, right? It's been there for so long, and it is still there in literally everything black people do. You see them surface and bring out their faces and their head anytime, any day. Right? While I was listening to all these things were the things black people have been telling everybody for so long. But the problem is that people will never listen to black people. People will never listen. Not until it is an emergency. That is when they would like to listen. Let's get into this video.
That was being asked on Twitter about what radicalized you, and different people were answering what situation or what happened in their lives that radicalized them to start their fight for justice or liberation. And I got to thinking about it because my original answer, and the answer that I've given a lot of times before, is that I was radicalized by the murder of Michael Brown Jr. It happened in Missouri, very close to where my parents lived. And so when the protests were happening, my parents were close by, and I was concerned for them and their safety. And I was also just tired of hearing about another black life taken by the police. But when I take it a bit further, when I think about it, and I thought about it after seeing that question, I was radicalized before that. When I was in third grade, I would have been 8 years old. I was on the school bus heading to school, and a boy on the bus called me the N-word. And in response, he called me the N-word and he spit on me. In response, I kicked him. And as a response to that, a result of that, my parents were called and I was given detention. 8 years old, defending myself for being called the N-word, and I was given detention. And I didn't think about it being radicalized at that point because I was 8 years old, but I think about how I shifted and how I treated the people around me from that point. It was to make sure that anybody that came to my path knew that they were cared for, they loved, and they deserved to be loved and cared for. And so while that doesn't seem as radical as being a social justice worker, or be as radical as being an anti-racism educator, or being as radical as somebody who has been part of protest, it was still a way of radicalizing me for recognizing that I get to decide how to respond to somebody's harm towards me. And that in my response of the harm directed towards me, I get to make the decision about how I don't want that harm to continue going forward. This is a lot of in draft speaking, but I wanted to get this out. That question really kind of sat with me and resonated with me because I'm so frustrated, and I've shared this with you. I'm so frustrated and I'm so angry about everything that's happening right now. It's so much all in one space, all at one time. And I needed to remind myself. And I wanted to remind little Portia why I'm here. And so while I do this, I want to invite you all to think about that. What radicalized you? What radicalized you? What got you into doing what you're doing now? What got you into doing the deconstruction, decolonizing work? What got you there? And how do you remind yourself of that? And as you are thinking about that and reminding yourself as to why you're here and how you got here, make sure you're staying hydrated. I love you.
Radicalized you? Being told in middle school I couldn't date someone because he was black. Having my family members call black people monkeys and the N-word. Being told to believe one thing only to grow up choosing to do my own research just to check and see if it's true, to only find out it's not true. And all I had to do was read it with my own eyes. Church. I grew up small town rural Missouri Baptist, going to church every Sunday, Bible study every week, youth group every week, only to grow up and see those same people politicize Jesus and use the Bible to harm people, which is the complete opposite of the way I was taught. I think the bigger question here is asking yourselves, why do you guys think that's radical at all? Why do you think it's radical for someone to care about other human beings and not want, children, adults, elderly being ripped out of their homes in the middle of the night and zip tied naked? Not wanting millions of people to lose food benefits so their children and they can eat? Knowing we need a new immigration system, but also accepting that the way this is being done is absolutely illegal and atrocious, and 22 people have died in ICE custody, and hundreds of U.S. citizens have been detained unlawfully. Nobody can look me in the eyes and tell me they still support this administration, and also tell me in the same breath they're a good person, because you're not. There's a reason Republicans are appalled at what's going on. There's a reason Republicans are leaving left and right, because they want nothing to do with this, because Republicans aren't MAGA. So if you are still trying to find and twist into a pretzel a way to support this administration, ask yourself why it's so important to you to celebrate billionaires over everyday working class Americans, farmers. Ask yourself why you care more about supporting party over people, supporting this administration over your neighbor. Ask yourself why you don't care that children are being pulled out of their apartment in the middle of the night naked and zip tied. I want you to ask yourself that. And while you're at it, go ahead and ask Jesus why you don't care either. See what he has.
I only bring up the contrast of my story because I really feel like God was like, I'm going to open your eyes to all this, and I'm also going to have you go through all this. Not only things that were done to you, but things that you did as a rebellious teenager, to show you how contrasted this world is in this country when you are white and you are getting into trouble. Which I was a traumatized little rebellious, angry little white girl. You weren't. You were standing up for yourself, defending yourself, and you got put in a juvenile detention for a month.
And then they wasn't trying to expunge my record, but my grandmother, she pushed it. And the crazy thing is, they try to say, oh, no, your record can't be expunged because you dropped out of school. I didn't drop out of school. My grandmother signed me out of school. So how was that my fault? So again, y'all trying to keep me into the system because of things that, one, I didn't do, or I self-defended myself.
They set you up for it. They want you to not graduate. They want you to not.
They set me up so bad, but it's okay because I'm still out here thriving.
Of course, but it hasn't been easy.
Oh, hell no.
And you look at all the different ways that it's like, if you, the way that things can be stacked against you, it's like, well, then it's harder. Like for a lot of people out here, it's harder to get a quote unquote real job. So when you give people a record for doing sometimes nothing, we know the rates of wrongful incarceration and wrongful convictions for Black folks are 7 to 8 times higher. But not only is it that people are getting locked up for things they didn't do, even if they get locked up for something they did do, they're getting way worse, more intense punishments than white folks are, right? White folks are getting off. We're getting off for shit left, right, and center. And then you give people a criminal record. Meanwhile, our president has how many felonies?
Child. And the government is the biggest criminals, gangbangers, all of that.
The biggest terrorists.
Biggest.
Yeah, the U.S. government's the biggest terrorist on the planet.
But they push it on all the Black people because they have to continue to degrade us to keep themselves in power.
Well, because you guys are the ones that know the truth more than anyone. I mean, indigenous people know the truth. Anyone who's been hunted, Muslim people who have been hunted by the U.S. government, both foreign and domestic, know the evil that the U.S. government is. And so I think that it's not theory. It's not just some abstract conspiracy that you're talking about. It's factual. It's provable if you string it all together. But what I was going to say with it is, like, so working in the juvenile injustice system and seeing what happens when you put a label on a child in their teenage years, in their middle school and high school years, and say you're criminal because you got in a fist fight or you had a truancy case.
I'm one of them kids.
You were in there.
I was in the juvenile system for defending myself at a school that I had just moved to. I had moved to Abington from Norristown, and I got into a fight. First of all, I started school in October. I started late. White girls start picking on me at the school, so I whooped her ass in that cafeteria because she swung on me first. Her mom tried to take me to court and press charges talking about she's scared for her daughter's safety and all this and the third. They was trying to expel me from the school, or they made me sign a waiver to be out of school for 3 months and do a home tutor or whatever. sent me to the juvenile system because the judge told me I had to apologize. I said, why do I have to apologize to this white girl? She was picking on me. I spoke to the teachers. I spoke to the principals. She continued to pick on me. And then on top of it, I didn't initiate the fight. She did. She swung on me. The counselor was standing right in between us. And she swung across the counselor to try to get me. So I'm sorry that I whooped her ass. But I was defending myself. And my understanding
is... Were you standing your ground?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but that's self-defense. So why the fuck I'm getting locked up? Why do I have to apologize and write a note?
Talk about another example of, we talked about metaphors, but examples of like, that's the exact premise. The U.S. government has been doing this to black people here in this country and abroad, and any people who defend their land, defend their people, stand up for themselves are the criminal. That's what an abuser does, though, right?
You know what's crazier? So after they put me in the juvenile system and I got fingerprinted, mind you, I'm only 14.
You were 14.
I got fingerprinted. They registered my hands as
This was
weapons.
Montgomery County?
Yeah. They registered my hands as weapons. Because there was a video, they seen the video of me beating on this girl, and I was stopping her out even after the security guard was trying to pick me up off her. It's cool. After that, I never got into any of the fights, but now I'm in the juvenile system. I'm in the detention center. Cool.
How long did you go there?
I was only in there for a month because I was getting out on good behavior because I'm not a bad kid. I literally leveled up quickly. I was in there minding my business, didn't bother nobody, nothing. It was time for me to get out.
You also knew how to play the game and the system. A lot of kids don't know how to navigate that.
I'm sitting here telling the kids,
a lot of people don't.
Y'all in the juvenile detention center acting a damn fool, acting more angry. That's gonna keep you in here longer.
That's what they want you to do. That's what they want you to do. They want to, because they're making money. These juvenile detention centers are for profit, just like our prisons are for profit. They want to provoke you to stay on probation, to stay in the juvenile detention center, so they can keep making money off you.
And when they couldn't keep me in the detention center no more, they had a conversation with my family, try to make it seem as if I'm such a bad kid. My family didn't want me to come home, so they put me in foster care. I was in there for over a year.
So that incident, you defending yourself in middle school,
put me all the way into foster care from just a regular school fight.
8th grade or 9th grade? So freshman year of high school, you went into a month-long of a juvenile detention, and then they put you into foster care.
Yep,
for a year.
Whole year.
Who decided that? DHS or
no, the juvenile detention center. They was like, oh, your family doesn't want you to come home, so we're gonna have to send you to placement. They said it was a placement.
What juvenile detention was it?
Norristown. So they sat there, oh, we're gonna put you in a placement. I'm like, okay, what placement? Next thing you know, I'm going all the way to Bucks County with people I don't know, and it's a foster home. I'm with foster kids. Even when I came home, they said it was all my fault. I should never got into fights, this and the third. I said a fight put me into foster care, and at the end of the day, I did go through a lot of discrimination at this foster care because I'm in Bucks County. I was in the Neshaminy. I'm a black girl in the Neshaminy. I don't even know nobody out here. And then y'all sending me to an alternative school called CSF Bucksmont, and it's a whole bunch of kids from probation, from outside, from all of this other stuff, and I'm in a whole foster care with other
fact that radicalized me? Oh, many things, Buttercup. Oh, very many things. When black or indigenous people fight against systems of state-sponsored oppression, we call them extremists or terrorists. When white people do it, we make fucking paintings of them. If someone seems smart about a subject and is speaking passionately about it and seems to know a lot, but you can't actually understand the point they're making, they're not a good communicator. Be suspicious. As a general rule, do not listen to what someone claims another person said. Listen to what that person said, whether it be a single that one bitch or many feminists. Becoming a well-read person will not make you interesting. Becoming a well-rounded person often does. The statements affordable housing and stable home prices are opposites. And finally, I have been thanked for putting on a condom just too many times. What's a fact?
What radicalized me, first and foremost, was listening to black people, because there's no one on this earth that white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, and everything tied to it goes harder against than the most melanated people on the planet. So actually listening and not trying to disprove their lived reality because it is not in alignment with mine. And I would say the contrast is what radicalized me more than anything. It was seeing the fact that oftentimes where my whiteness, the color of my skin, was the only difference between myself and another person, and the way that the other individual and I were treated was drastically different. The outcome of their situation in a system, an institution, was drastically different. And you want some examples? I can give you several. I'm going to stick with this example for now because I think it might be one of, if not the most prominent in terms of the contrast and what really radicalized me to understand a system which offers me and grants me unearned privilege, power, and protection, and at the other end criminalizes, harms, oppresses, and subjugates Black folks and other people of color. When I was in grad school, I was working as a caseworker for an agency that was contracted by the county to work with child welfare and juvenile justice. And let's put justice and even welfare in quotes, because if you're at all aware and awake to these systems, you know you need to hold those two terms loosely. So with that said, it was not only my lived experience and what I experienced in a broken home as a troubled youth, and, you know, looking at how the Black and brown families on my caseload were treated, but it was also the contrast of how those families were treated by the same caseworkers next to the white families that were on the same social workers' caseload. And it was understanding that we humanize ourselves, we humanize each other, white folks, right? And we dehumanize Black and brown people. And with that comes drastically different outcomes. So when I was a troubled youth, getting into trouble, running away from home, stealing from my job, I had guidance counselors, you know, writing letters on my behalf, making excuses, saying, you know, she just has been through a lot. You know, I had newly had the mental health diagnosis of bipolar disorder at 16. This is something I was seeing coming up against with so many of the youth I was working with. Was these kids were doing a lot of times far less than I was, and they were being thrown into juvenile detention for up to a year, sometimes more. They were being kept in the system because the system is making money off of keeping them there. So yeah, I don't want to make this too long. Sure, I lost a lot of people already, but I am happy to share more in depth about that specific example or provide additional examples of the contrast that I'm talking about, of exactly what has radicalized me, is listening to Black folks, listening to queer folks, listening to trans people, listening to people who have experienced more extreme ends of poverty than I have, listening to people from other parts of the world, listening to Muslim people, listening to people who this world makes it incredibly hard to exist for. And understanding that while I face I'm a woman, I grew up low income, grew up in a broken home, I have a severe mental illness, bipolar 1 with psychosis, but I also have some very real levels of unearned privilege, power, and protection that I experience the world with, and that have gotten me out of trouble in ways that I don't deserve. And so with that being said, I'm very interested in talking about how we use this, what has radicalized us, quote unquote, and turn that into tangible change, because it's not enough to talk about it here, right? Like, I'm not interested in leaving it online, and we don't need any brownie points. We're not good for naming just the facts and the reality. But I know that we are at a very scary time in this world, definitely in this country, and we can't afford to have less honest conversations. We can only afford to have more. And
so in 2008, I voted for McCain. And 2012, voted for Obama. And since then, progressively got more progressive. I was a worship leader. I was a youth pastor. I would evangelize and try to get everyone saved. And I was lovingly against same-sex relationships, etc., etc. What changed me? What radicalized me? Jesus. I started seeing how the state is just like, how religion is an apparatus of the state, you know, how it's a tool of oppression, how organized religion is so far from the teachings of Jesus and other prophets and wise teachers that have come before, and how people like Dr. King were killed for speaking the truth and pushing back against the powers that be. I see how our priorities as a country that claims to be a Christian nation, which I hope that's a joke if they're still claiming, if someone out there is still claiming that, that's hilarious. But I just saw how it was just a bunch of bullshit, like hypocrisy, you know. Nothing radicalized me. It was being exposed to different life stories, to immigrants, dreamers, to queer people, not buying the rhetoric anymore, like experiencing it firsthand, going into immigrant detention centers. You know, I've already been in jails and prisons, right? Because my dad has landed himself there numerous times. But I never, you know, I stopped taking the media's word on like what immigration is all about, what the problems are, or why people are in same-sex relationships, because they love each other. I started realizing how gross it was that we obsess over people's genitalia, and like from gender reveals all the way to like wanting to check what's under a woman's dress before she enters a stall to make sure she's not trans. Like what? I just kept noticing how there's no real effort to improve Black maternal mortality rates, or rape, or poverty, or anything that GOP legislators and even Democrats sometimes, like, there was no real effort to like alleviate these things from an evidence-based standpoint. As a social worker, I look at evidence-based practice, like what has been proven to be effective in the past. Put your biases aside and do it. And yeah, what radicalized me was love, was throwing away everything that was programmed in me, everything, questioning everything, and letting God reveal herself to me in new ways. You know, just being like a child. Jesus said, gotta come to the Father like a child, right? And I did, and I got to the place of basically starting over and saying, if no one had ever programmed me with these ideas about patriarchy, about gender roles, about sexuality, about anything, plant medicine, right? If no one had ever taught me these things, what would I believe, like discovering them on my own right now? What would my opinions be? That's where I'm at, you know. Because of the teachings of Jesus Christ, I learned compassion and humility, and also learning a lot of New Age, which isn't New Age, but just about consciousness and your ego and your heart space and energy and everything else. And while the world is falling apart, and while it seems like everything's on fire internally, and like me and God, we're good, because like that makes more sense than it ever did, and that feels more true and real than anything else. So what radicalized me was
What radicalized you? What made you a liberal? Babe, when I learned about slavery in elementary school, I said no. I said no more, and I stuck with that. Ever since I was a child, I had empathy for other people. I learned about things all throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, about situations of injustice, and I said,
This is all I got from this video. You know, sometimes talking about Black history and the things and a lot surrounding Black history, and how, you know, some people that have lived with Black people do not know Black people well enough, or do not understand them well enough. Sometimes I am like, how do people live with people for so long and not like know them or understand them like a little? But then also, one thing will eventually radicalize somebody as life goes on and all that. But some people will never also be radicalized. I want you to have this in mind. Some people, no matter what you do, they can never ever be radicalized. Now, I am looking at how literally everybody has something to say about how far, how they were radicalized, and how they did not know a lot about Black people, or how Black people have been saying the same thing over and over and over. Yet, it is hard for them to comprehend. Some of them do understand that there are differences, let's say how Black people are being treated and how they are treated. But trust me, one thing I know for sure is that some people will never accept it. Why? Because they are already evil-minded. Yes, some people are already, their mindset, it's so horrible that if you got nothing to do with someone that look like them or them, it is not, like their sympathy and empathy is only for themselves and people that look like them. If it's for other people, they do not have that kind of time. Literally, the other one is talking about how police brutality and also correction center and where they make, and this is actually true. All this, let's say prison and all that, they make a whole lot of money from people because they want to look for a way to keep you back there. That is one of the reasons. Sometimes I sit back and I have had this discussion with one of my friends, and we sat down, we were talking, and he was like, why is it just only one group of people that all this is happening? Just one group of people. It's not like it might not be happening to other people, but Black people it's something that you wake every day, it is happening. The one you get to see on the news and the ones you don't get to see on the news, right? So I was like, why is it that a Black man will do something that would not warrant somebody going to the prison or jail, but the person will end up in jail or prison? Yes, that is how bad it is. And when we talk about how slavery has not been over, that slavery is still ongoing, some people will think you are just yapping. This is not a yap. It is true. I remember bringing a video here where a man was talking about how he went on a trip and he has his friend's son to take care of the dog in the house and all that. So each time he brings the boy to take care of the house because he pays him, when they are going on trip, so that the young boy can walk the dog. So he finds out that there is something odd about their house, but he's not able to understand. Figure all of it out, only for him to eventually, he was caught in the house, bringing in his friends, alcohol, marijuana, and all that, right? In the house. And the one that he was caught. So they eventually called police and the rest of it. So the police came. They saw that the guys were all drunk and they were all smoking and the rest of it. And in the state where they live, it's illegal. It's not yet approved to. So the police ended up coming. And the boys, the only thing they did was that they only had to call their mom on phone and drove back home. Nothing, no charges, nothing was done. And the man was pissed. He was like, so why is this case ending like this? And moreover, why is it that if still the kids are drunk and about to drive? So how do you want them to get home? The police just shot him down and they all went home and all that. So the man was just like that. He said that thing kept him up for so long that he was saying, if you were people that look like me, trust me, there is no how they would have gone home. They would have been taken to the station and the rest, which is true. So all these things, some people are giving grace. Some people are not giving grace. That is one of the reasons why a white person will look you dead in the face and call you the N-word and tell you nothing will happen, not until you get his or her teeth knocked off. That was one of the reasons why one woman's hair, I mean like natural hair, not wig cap, got snatched out of her head. I am not lying. White woman, her hair, natural hair on her head got snatched off. Sometimes you say things at the wrong place. And why her hair was snatched off, right? She was with a black man. I'm sure majority of you will know this story. She was with a black man. So when the black man came out and saw her, what happened? They told her that she called the person the N-word. The man just left her and carried his thing and left the woman there. I guess the relationship ended there. Because for him to see where they were snatching her hair and he didn't bother, he didn't say anything, he just left them. That is how bad it is. The video is getting so long already, but then I will draw the curtain here. Bye for now.